Hello and welcome back to another episode of LA Legal. I'm Leanna. Joining me today is Nima Romani, of course, and our fabulous guest, Jen. So tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, what you do, what areas of law you practice, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennine Nwoko, and I am an entertainment and business attorney. I have my own firm called CJN Law Group in Encino in Los Angeles. I mainly practice in transactional matters. I work with talent, creatives, entrepreneurs, business owners, and I do a little bit of litigation as well, intellectual copyright matters, as well as business litigation.
Love that. Well, that's why we're putting a pin in our murder and serial killers, and we will be talking about Taylor Swift because we're just going to let you run with your area of expertise. So today we're talking about Taylor Swift. She was sued twice, actually, for copyright infringement. So let's take it away. Taylor Swift is an American singer, songwriter, and actress who has become one of the most successful and influential figures in the music industry. Throughout her career, Swift has won numerous awards, sold over 50 million albums, and 150 million singles worldwide. Impressive. In 2017, she defended herself against claims that she was plagiarizing the lyrics used in her mega popular 2014 bop, Shake It Off. She was subject to a copyright lawsuit brought by the songwriters for 3LW, who released a 2001 single called Play Is Gun Play. In a sworn declaration, Taylor claimed, quote, that the lyrics to Shake It Off were written entirely by me. And then she went on to say again, quote, until learning about the plaintiff's claims in 2017, I had never heard the song Play Is Gun Play and had never heard of the group 3LW. So this aged me a little bit because Taylor Swift, I could probably name one or two songs, but I know 3LW. So.
Definitely. Me too.
Where do you stand? That's what I want to know.
Listen,
Who do you know? Who are you a fan of?
Normally I don't care what I say, especially on the podcast, but when it comes to Taylor Swift and her fans, I mean, those Swifties, they don't mess around. So I'm not going to say anything bad about Taylor Swift, and I respect her. She is one of the biggest names in music right now. Self-made. I personally think, I got kids, I think she's talented. Mm-hmm. So you all may disagree. But I'm super excited to have Jen on the show because usually we got litigators and now we got someone that builds it up instead of knocking it down. So I'm interested to hear her thoughts from someone who represents talent and someone who has experience in IP litigation. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I personally love Taylor Swift. I've met her before at the Billboard Women Awards, and she is such a sweetheart.
Is she?
Yeah. And like Nima said, I feel like she's really talented. I respect her because she's fighting for songwriters as well. So that's been something that she's been pushing throughout her career. So I definitely respect that.
I agree. I think it's really cool. I do respect that as well, right? I mean, she's really young. She's probably, in her 20s?
I think she's 34, 33 or 34.
All right. Well, whatever. She's really young. She stands her ground. She really is out there making moves in the industry. So I think it's
yeah, I think she's one of the first artists to try to own her own masters and
yes,
all that type of stuff.
Yep.
So I mean, good for her. I mean, she's a great business mind as well. Mm-hmm. So in addition to being a talented performer,
100%. So let's talk about this lawsuit, you guys. So she's being sued not by 3LW, the group, which includes Adrienne Bailon, who has gone on Cheetah Girls. Anybody know Cheetah Girls? Yes?
Yeah.
No? Your kids are too young for that, so I don't blame you if you don't know. But so anyway, the songwriters Sean Hall and Nathan Butler, so they're behind the lawsuit. They're accusing her of lifting lyrics from their song and using it in her Shake It Off. So I had to go back and do some research, right? Because what are these lyrics? What is being claimed here? So the 3LW chorus in Play Is Gonna Hate, this is what the lyrics are. Players, they gun play, and haters, they gonna hate.
Can you sing that for us?
No.
Yeah. One more time.
Ballers, they gon' ball.
Yeah.
Okay, that's about as much of singing as you're gonna get out of me. And then Taylor Swift's version is players gonna play, play, play. Haters gonna hate, hate, hate. Baby, I'm just gonna shake, 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 shake. Okay. So I'm gonna ask you first, right? Because this is what you do, talk to us about the similarities here. Because when you kind of see this, when you hear it especially, there's really no, the rhythm is different, the melody is different. I mean, the words obviously are the same, but where is the copyright here? When you see or hear these lyrics, what are your thoughts on that?
So it's interesting because typically in copyright cases, it's either the musical composition or the sound recording that's at issue. Here, it's a very small part of the musical composition, which is the lyrics and the melody. So it's two phrases that they're claiming. I think they said the player's going to play and the hater's going to hate. So those are two very short phrases that they're claiming that were infringed upon. And I know that Taylor Swift's lawyers came back and said that those, they're too short to, to meet the threshold. And initially, the judge had actually dismissed the lawsuit, and he found that those phrases are not original and they're too short. And I will say that I agree, because if we go by a very short phrase, that's a part of the musical composition, that's going to be a problem later on. So I'm glad that this case didn't go to trial. And I know we'll talk about it later, but I personally don't see the similarities. I know that the lawyers also pulled like 12 different cases or different songs where those phrases were used.
Oh,
I think it
them.
was, yeah, like, Player Hater by
Yeah.
Notorious B.I.G. and a couple other songs. And I just don't see the similarities, because it's two very short
Yeah.
phrases that are commonly used. They're not original enough, in my
What are your
opinion.
thoughts?
No, I agree. I agree with Jenna. It was Judge Fitzgerald, right? So you got the district judge there. And initially, he grants summary judgment saying, listen, you're talking about two phrases that are commonly used, right? Copyright not only just has to be substantially similar, but it has to be some original content.
Yeah.
It can't be something that's used by kids throughout the country on the playground. And if you look at Taylor Swift's own declaration that she submitted in support of the summary judgment motion, she's like, listen, I grew up on the East Coast hearing this. I never heard of 3LW until this lawsuit. I didn't lift it. These are words that are commonly used. You cannot copyright them. And the judge initially agreed, of course, went up to the good old Ninth Circuit, which, took a very, very, very liberal view on copyright law and how extensive the phrase needs to be reverse remanded. And then the judge had his hands tied, really, and had to sort of basically allow the case to go to trial.
Yeah.
Well, her mom also submitted a declaration saying, look, she grew up on a farm. I monitored very closely what she watched. She was never allowed to watch, like, what is it, TRL?
TRL. She
TRL,
literally says I wasn't allowed to watch it until I was 13.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
funny.
exactly. And she's like, she never had sleepovers. She was never allowed to go. I mean, good job, mom, you know?
Right.
So she would have never heard the song because 3LW was big, I think, between 1990, like, 9 to 2005.
Yeah.
And so, she just could not have infringed upon their song because she's never heard of them or of the song. So, I thought that was
It was
an
an interesting
little-
argument, and it sort of gave us a glimpse into Taylor Swift, and maybe that's why
childhood.
she had all that sort of heartbreak
Yeah.
because
She grew up
yeah,
on a
she was
farm.
never allowed to leave the house to watch TV.
Or watch
Apparently,
MTV.
Or she missed the TRL days. You guys remember TRL?
course,
yeah.
When music was actually being played on MTV?
Yeah,
Those were
I
the
remember,
best
yeah, they had
days.
the countdown and
Yeah,
everything.
I would come home from school at like 3 p.m., 3:30, and that's when they would have the countdown, and I'd have my lunch and
It's funny. I was in Finland at the time, so we have like a 10-hour time difference.
Yeah.
So I remember like being late for school watching MTV.
watching MTV. There you go. But okay, so here's what I also wanted to talk about because I went digging, right? And so obviously there's a lot of songs and a lot of artists who use these phrases, right? We have R. Kelly. Song called Number One featuring Carrie Hilson. She also said, or he raps or sings, whatever. And them haters, they're going to hate, but we're just going to keep blowing it up. There's 504 Boys, whoever that is. Haters going to hate. Notorious B.I.G., as you mentioned. Puff Daddy. He was Puff Daddy at the time. So there's just so many songs.
Ice Cube, even. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes way back,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Right.
this is someone that like.
Yeah, so, haters gonna hate. To me, it's kind of like, well, what else are they supposed to do? The minute you throw in haters, like, what they're gonna love you? No, right? So haters gonna hate is just kind of like flows off, rolls off your tongue a little bit. But also, if we start sort of siding with, what was their name? Sean Hall and whatnot, right? Then you have phrases that you hear commonly, like even in Urban Dictionary, like c'est la vie. Like you're gonna start having to get rid of these phrases that are commonly used in everyday life, right? And then it just, what does that do to the industry, right? If every little word, every phrase that consists of 2 or 3 words is now gonna have to be like copyrighted, I mean trademarked. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's the issue, because like we're talking about the musical composition, which is the melody and lyrics. I would understand if it's maybe like an 8 count or a chorus or a verse, a part of a verse, but 2 phrases is just too minimal. And I feel like that would have caused or set a very strict precedent that would have changed the industry and songwriting in general.
Right.
Yeah, no, I was surprised. I was surprised at the Ninth Circuit's ruling. Obviously, like, we're plaintiff lawyers, so like we're all about like filing lawsuits and litigation. So when I'm siding with the defense, I'm like, you got to know that like maybe it's gone too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
And I'm all for songwriters too. Like if we talk about streaming rights and the small percentage that songwriters make, I'm all for songwriters. But in this case, I just Did not
Well, this
side
is
with
actually the second lawsuit, right? I mean, she was sued before for the same exact lyric. What's his name? Jesse Graham in 2015. He tried to sue her. He actually, before filing a $42 million lawsuit, mind you. So let's come back to that. But he asked for co-writing credit on the track. And obviously, they told him to go to hell. That's not going to happen. But $42 million. I mean, do you like what an astronomical number
Well, I mean,
to
look,
claim the damages?
yeah, this is like your deep pocket, right? It's not like some insurance company or a big Fortune 500
Yeah.
corporation.
Yeah.
This is Taylor Swift, right? If you're going to go after someone, you're not going to go after the person recording, you know, in their parents' garage, right? You're going to go after the biggest artist there is, someone that has the ability to pay, and someone that, like, you know, even if you've got a small chance of winning, you could potentially get a pretty big windfall, right? But most of these lawsuits historically have failed, right? These big bands, these artists, they have lawyers, they vet everything just for plagiarism. And typically they lose, right? Obviously, recently, like Led Zeppelin. But then a recent case that's happening right now, obviously, you know, Marvin Gaye's, you know, heirs have a, you know, right now actually sued Ed Sheeran for copyright infringement. And interestingly, those heirs won one of the biggest copyright cases in recent memory, of course, against Robin Thicke. And
Blurred
they ended up getting, yeah,
Lines.
Blurred Lines, right?
Yeah.
You know, they ended up getting about 5 million, but and 50% of the, I think, royalties going forward. So that's pretty big money.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
I recently saw on TikTok that Lady Gaga, was it? I can't remember if it was. Okay, we have to look this up, but I can't remember if it was a lyric or the music to one of her songs came from Madonna, and so Madonna then is like now going on tour or something, and so she was sampling the song, and she was just like, "This for you, Lady Gaga," you know, for stealing my music. So I thought that was interesting.
It's also interesting, like with Lady Gaga, you mentioned her name is actually from a song lyric, Queen Gaga,
Queen, yeah.
and that's funny because that's, you know, that doesn't fall under
a great
copyright.
song.
Yeah, that doesn't fall under copyright protection. So it's, you know, like what copyrights protect versus what they don't protect. It's interesting, and there's nuances. So it's like hard for people who don't practice or even, you know about that to really know like what's going on with these lawsuits.
Well, I want to pick your brain a little bit about sampling, right? Because that's very common. You know, somebody will write a song, and then my understanding is they record it and then they start sampling it out to different artists, right? And then if a song doesn't hit the mark or whatever, right, and then somebody else may take it or they may take portions of it, but where does copyright infringement come into play with something like that, with sampling?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So with the copyright protection, like when you're the copyright owner, you basically have the right to license, you have the right to sell it, you have the right to perform it. So if you're the copyright owner, you can license your copyright to all these different, you know, artists, songwriters. So that's kind of where the protection like that's where the protection really stems from, because if you want to license it to other artists, you're making the money. So if, you know, if someone's stealing your work or not paying you to use it, that's an issue since you're the creator of it. And can you like elaborate a little bit of what you meant also with like the sampling?
Well, I just think it's interesting, right? Because that, again, this, I was thinking about this last night when I was watching that Lady Gaga, and I wish I saved it because I can't remember what song it was, right? But from what I gathered was that song was initially sampled to Madonna and someone else. Madonna took it, and then Lady Gaga was also given the sampled version, and she ended up taking the song or a portion of it or bits and pieces of it, and so
But Madonna had licensed it
and then
already.
Madonna had already licensed it. So
Oh, okay.
we really should look into that because that was really interesting. But and that's what got me thinking, like what happens in a situation like
Oh,
that where they
right.
both get the sampled song.
Yeah, and that happens a lot with producers sending out samples. So, you know, like the producers will sample, they'll create the entire, you know, the sound recording, the song, add the melody and the lyrics with the songwriters. But when the producers are sampling, you know, famous songs or whatever music that they're using, they're sending it out to a lot of people, a lot of artists, a lot of managers. And, you know, sometimes it becomes a thing where one artist is interested, the other artist starts using it, takes it, another producer mixes and masters it. So that is an issue too, where then it's like, you know, you might get sued later on, you might have to pay licensing fees if you've used it, and that does happen a lot, but it just doesn't really make the news, or it doesn't, you know, hit the courts, because it's usually settled out of court, especially with bigger artists.
Yeah, my kind of question in the case though is like, I thought, look, Taylor Swift, I know celebrities try to avoid trials at all costs, but she had a very, very winnable case, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a confidential settlement. We don't know how much she paid. It probably,
What do you guys think?
I think it had to have been a seven-figure settlement,
Yeah, it was
given
a
how
few
much,
million.
yeah, given how much that song was worth. Easily seven figures. I don't think it was quite eight figures, but I think it was seven-figure settlement to make it go away. But it was a very winnable case. I thought that Taylor Swift, obviously, a lot of people love her. I think jurors would have loved her as well. Really, the plaintiffs were relying on just an expert witness declaration that said that this was substantially similar. Judge had previously ruled it wasn't. I think even if they got a jury verdict, I think that same judge would have been sympathetic to Swift, would have either reduced it potentially or even overturned it. But the Ninth Circuit said, listen, it's an issue of fact. You got to let the jurors take a crack at it, or at least hear what this expert witness has to say when he or she testifies. I'm just surprised she didn't push the case to trial because she had a very winnable case. And I think sometimes if you're a celebrity, you got to kind of draw the line. We saw it recently with Gwyneth Paltrow on the ski case, right?
Oh
I
my
mean, she spent, what, like a couple weeks there in
Yeah.
Utah. She only asked for $1. She ended up getting her $1. But if you're a celebrity and you start settling with these types of, what do you want to call it, copyright trolls, and there's only those
Yeah.
patent trolls. If you start settling with these types of trolls, then you become a target, you know. And again, this won't be the last lawsuit that she deals with.
But then you also, on the flip side, I think a conversation that happens with the attorneys is that just like people love her, like the three people on this couch,
You
there's
too.
also a few,
Yeah.
three,
Yeah,
okay?
too.
For the purposes of this episode, it's three.
You guys dig into Liana's social media and the previous comments about Taylor
I'm
Swift,
about
and
to
post them in the comments, please, below.
At me, okay? But there's also a lot of people who dislike her very much, right? I mean, we kind of see this. Just
Who?
stop
Oh.
it.
At
No,
Liana's
so I
lawyer.
think no, but I think it's a conversation that happens, right? Because you don't know who's going to end up on the jury, so I think it's a gamble regardless. Even if like you as a lawyer think this is a very winnable case, you never know who ends up on that jury. And this is a conversation that I remember we had about the Kardashians when they went on trial, right? When they were recently sued by Black China, right? People love them, people hate them. So then it makes it a matter of like who's going to be on that jury pool, and are they going to, jeopardize your case?
Yeah, because I mean that's a good point because I was with Nima. I think it was a very winnable case, and if it would have gone to trial and she would have won, that would have set a great precedent. But yeah, you're right. You never know which way it could go, and then like it would be a very public trial as well. And probably for her, it wasn't worth it with the
Yeah.
music that she's creating and touring and all that other stuff. So
Yeah, obviously she makes a lot more money than she ever would sitting through probably like a multi-week trial. It just, for me, given who she was, she strikes me as a bit of a fighter.
Yeah,
Someone who's
definitely. I
feisty,
agree.
someone who doesn't really stand down to anyone.
even
And
like with the catalog sale
yeah.
that you were
Yeah,
mentioning.
wasn't she trying to buy the rights to her own music recent? Wasn't
Yeah, and it was Scooter Brown had bought
Yeah,
it.
Scooter, that's right.
I guess like kind of like behind her back, and
Yeah.
yeah, she made it very public. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people sided with her with that.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that, look, I mean, she doesn't need any more positive PR, but it would have been a great case from a legal perspective. People would have loved her because, I mean, it's clear. Look, and again, sometimes you see these copyright cases like David Bowie, Vanilla Ice. Dude, it sounds the same, Like
Yeah.
clearly, you copy the song. I don't need to be an expert in music or anything, but this, in my humble lay opinion, non-musical mind, this was not a copyright
Oh,
infringement case.
100%.
If I were a juror sitting on this case, I'd be interested to see Taylor Swift. I'd be pissed off that someone dragged me into court for this.
No, 100%. I agree with you because I actually sat through and listened to both songs because I was like, okay, maybe in addition to the lyrics, maybe it's the melody, maybe it's the beat, maybe it's completely. I mean, one is like pop, the other one's completely R&B, very different styles. I saw zero similarities, so I definitely agree a winnable case. But why do you think she opted to settle?
I just think jurors don't like to make their private lives public. And, this isn't a family law case. This isn't a criminal case. This isn't like those typical embarrassing. This isn't like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard where her dirty laundry is going to come out. But look, she'd be on the stand. She'd be cross-examined. She'd already put herself out there as to like what she watched and listened to growing up. So maybe she's like, look, this is like not even one concert for me. Let me just write a check and just make it go away. But again, given the type of person she is, at least in my observations from the outside, I'm surprised she wrote that check when she didn't have to.
Right.
I definitely agree. I would have loved to see the trial, as I mentioned, just to set the precedent based on what I think would have happened. So yeah, it would have been nice to see justice being served.
Right.
And again, these are the types of cases that are usually defense cases. Again, we brought up the Robin Thicke case, but other than that, Usually these cases are defense verdicts. So
Yeah, and I agree that like it might have been a little bit of like a shakedown too, right? Because like the songs
shake
they
it
were
off or shake down.
shake it off was a shakedown.
Yeah.
But you know, like the Puff Daddy song, right, came so much like years and years before Taylor Swift, the Notorious B.I.G., R. Kelly, right? So it's like you have this person
Yeah,
going
but no one's
after
getting money
them.
from R. Kelly right now, right?
I mean, you can go after Puff Daddy, P Diddy, whatever he
Oh,
is
yeah.
now. You know, no one's going after these guys. They're going after this like young, you know, up and coming kind of at the time girl, right? This was
Yeah.
one of her first
right, yeah,
hits,
yeah.
so I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely.
She's the target. You know, they identified someone that was going to fold, and maybe the plaintiff's lawyers did a good job.
Sexism, maybe a little
Maybe.
bit.
I
I
think
mean,
a little
bit.
You guys,
Maybe.
do you think that had something to do? Because
Maybe.
who's gonna go against like what P Diddy?
P.
They
Diddy.
could
Yeah.
have gone after him.
Yeah. Who knows? Whatever it was, sexism, racism, whatever you want to call it, whatever it was, those lawyers saw a mark and they took her down. I'm not saying that it's going to affect her, you know,
Yeah.
professionally at all, or her bank account. Again,
No.
it's nothing for Taylor Swift. But, you know, from a pure sort of justice perspective, you know, if I were her, I would have dug my heels in and pushed it all the way, because that's the type of case you send a message, not just to these
Yeah.
trolls, to any others that are going to come after you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the songwriters, lawyers definitely were aggressive because they appealed even after it was dismissed. And I feel like typically in these cases, you know, if you're not getting paid up front, like you're not going to really fight Taylor Swift's team
Yeah.
that hard. So that was interesting to me too, that they actually like appealed that
Yeah,
decision.
maybe they needed money real bad. I mean, 3LW has been out of the game
Very
for
true.
a really long time. So they're like,
Saw
Taylor Swift, let's go after her.
opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, and now they're getting a piece of Shake It Off, probably
Shake It
for
Off,
yeah,
yeah.
eternity. So we'll see.
Taylor Swift is shaking it off.
Yeah.
All right,
Moving
well,
on.
final thoughts on the podcast, final thoughts on this topic before we wrap up.
Yeah, well, I was just going to mention Blurred Lines. I feel like that was a case that set, you know, the opposite precedent. And to me, it's still so interesting how they got that really high damage award in that case. Because I'm sure you guys have listened to the songs Blurred Lines and, you know, Marvin Gaye. And it's just like from a copyright perspective, I don't think there was enough. So to me, that was, like you said, a jury trial could go either way. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Jen. And you kind of see trends in litigation, you know. So I brought up Johnny Depp, right? So now you're seeing kind of defamation cases, right? You know, former president's in the middle of it right now. You know, defamation lawsuits were not typically brought in this country for First Amendment reasons, and they just weren't big money winners, right? All of a sudden, you know, Depp and his lawyers, they knock it out of the park. Obviously, you know, unique case, and you kind of see these other lawyers bringing defamation cases more aggressively. Historically, we didn't see them for decades in this country. And then with copyright litigation, right, we brought up the one that's happening right now. But again, if you can get settlements, if you can get judgments, then all of a sudden, look, lawyers, we're in the business of making money, right? We're going to copy that type of litigation and go after similar lawsuits. So maybe we're seeing a little bit of a trend with more plaintiffs' lawyers taking copyright
And
cases.
honestly, I was going to mention that, like, I mean, copyright in itself is so, like, it's so lucrative because from the plaintiff standpoint or the copyright owner standpoint, you have the copyright as soon as the work is created, right? But to actually bring a suit, you just have to register it. Registrations are very cheap. You get to register your product, and then you bring a lawsuit. There's statutory damages. So even like in the arts and you know, like photography, if you sue someone who's using your pictures without authorization, it's almost a guaranteed win if you were to sue. But these cases are settled all the time. So I did IP litigation. You know, there's sites where photographers can just register their work and their copyrights are being monitored all around the internet. So they'll see when someone's using their photos or textiles or whatever the case may be, and you can sue automatically, get statutory damages, or then settle out of court. So
I mean,
it's
look at
it's
Disney.
a business.
There's. I'm sure they have a huge department of just like
They
I've seen people
do.
on TikTok get
Yeah.
taken down by Disney
Yeah.
because they posted something without consent. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
literally,
I
like
mean, Disney's a former client when I was at Melvin, and they're very
Yeah.
aggressive. Another thing about these cases, as Jen mentioned, I mean, there's lawyers that just do this, and you're in district court all the time. You're federal court,
Yeah.
original jurisdiction. So imagine you're a nobody, or even if you're a somebody, and you're dragged into district court. A lot of lawyers don't like litigating there.
Yeah.
So, you know, definitely puts pressure on defendants in these cases.
Definitely, yeah. So yeah.
Well, Jen, thanks so much for coming. Thanks for having
Thanks
us.
for having
joining
me.
us. And I'm
Yeah.
so excited that I finally met someone from Finland. I mean, I thought that was like a really
I know.
cool fun fact.
So
Who loves
random.
Taylor Swift like myself. But thank you to all of you for viewing, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.